I wonder if there's still cannibalism in anyone's culture in some part of the world. I know that when the explorers, I believe it was Cook, that came over to Hawaii and discovered all those natives over there. They were very big into paganism, eating human flesh, known as cannibalism. And they sacrificed their virgins to the sun gods, and they were doing some deplorable deeds in the name of their gods. So, much like the Aztecs, and I know that many people throughout the past few hundred years, perhaps even more so in our modern culture here in the 21st century, have accused Christians of extreme dogmatism and harshness because of historical precedents. And some Christians, mostly under the Catholicism and Lutheranism and some of these other denominations, they have done certain things that were not really Christ-like. They were known for their brutality and their harsh treatment, torturing people because they thought they were witches, or they thought they were practicing things that were considered an abomination to God. So they would torture them to make them confess of their secrets, their dark secrets. And they put people in chambers, torture chambers and dungeons, and they raked people over the coals if they were suspected of practicing magic or sorcery or anything else, voodoo, things that were against the holy commandments of Moses. They were still practicing the Levitical priesthood kind of stuff, where people, instead of picking up stones, they would just hang them or burn them at the stake. But we've come a long way in our modern times. We don't do those things now to people that don't agree with us. We're a little bit more liberal in our perspective, more democratic. But having said that, God still has to be recognized as a powerful and sovereign entity who has the ultimate say in all matters, whether it be political or religious or anything else. And there's certain behaviors that are condoned, and there's certain behaviors that should be shunned and shamed. And you do have certain sects of individuals and groups even today. You got these different parties and affiliations and fraternities that still try to maintain certain traditions and ceremonies and practices. And some are more stricter than others. But that's pretty much the issue, the dividing line in our culture, in our American culture. You have ultra-conservatives, you have ultra-liberals, you have moderates, you got those who try to find middle ground to try to bring harmony between two opposing forces, which has been a common theme throughout all of man's history. There's always been the yin and yang, the balancing of the scales, the opposites trying to get along with each other, trying to find a medium, conciliatory approach, reconciliatory and harmonious dispositions and verdicts. Anyway, that's why I'm really glad that we as believers in Christ, followers of Christ, disciples, devotees, We're under a new covenant. We're not under the Mosaic covenant, which was really harsh in dealing with perversions, deviations from God's blueprint for living. There's a lot more grace and mercy now since the new covenant was established after Christ was crucified and rose again. And the new covenant, though it still doesn't condone sin or sinful practice, there's a lot more leeway, a lot more give and take when it comes to people who maybe fall off the wagon or make a mistake here and there. Or they're not in deliberation of certain deeds or certain ambitions or whatever, but they just occasionally miss that perfect mark, that bullseye, if you will. And when they miss it, there's provisions for that. It's called the blood atonement. And it's not their blood, the sinner's blood, that has to be shed. It was Christ's blood on behalf of sinners when he was hung on the cross. It was God's method of being just and punishing sin and disobedience, and giving him the legitimacy to be able to forgive people and have mercy on them and pardon them. So it didn't violate God's nature of being just and merciful at the same time, which is that kind of that balancing scale thing, kind of that middle of the road. God possesses both those attributes, mercy and wrath, and he can judge, but he also can show mercy at the same time, and he did when Jesus hung on the cross. It was punishment and mercy displayed on one mountain called Golgotha, and so it's a wonderful thing. So if now Jesus told that woman who was supposedly caught in the middle of adultery, he told her, is there anybody else to accuse you? And she said, no, they all left. And then Jesus told her, go and sin no more. And I don't know if she took it to heart, but I assume that she did. I assume that she didn't practice whoredom anymore, or adultery, or fornication. But she was forgiven at the same time. Christ said, I'd no longer accuse you, which means she was totally forgiven. She was exonerated. She was absolved. She was let off the hook. God pardoned her through his son Christ. Christ was acting as God's representative to humanity in forgiving people of their sins, no matter how gross those sins were, or how disgusting and horrible the sins were, which is probably a very controversial thing to say or to promote or to even think, that God could pardon people who were guilty of even the most heinous crimes. I wouldn't, because but God apparently has that within his nature, the ability to forgive people of their sins. But it comes at a great cost, and it doesn't cost the person that's forgiven anything, but it cost Christ. It brought it cost Christ what cost God in through producing a sacrificial victim, if you will, on behalf of sinners, which is everyone that has been born since the beginning of the world, or since Adam and Eve sinned, the first sinners. So it cost God, because he had to give humanity his own son, so that though he got him back in an even greater state, because he was greater in the sense that God was able to demonstrate his righteousness and his mercy and his grace towards humanity through his son, because he was born of the Virgin Mary and took on human flesh, so that he could be man's representative, because he was God in a body. So he basically became that bridge between himself and mankind, which is very good news. That's why it's called the gospel.